Welcome to Hope in the Face of Cancer. I'm your host, Darcie Wells, President and CEO of CanCare. Recently, I had the opportunity to join the Community Oncology Alliance podcast to talk about something that's very close to my heart, the emotional support that cancer caregivers need and so often don't receive. November is National Caregivers Month, and this conversation feels especially timely. We explored what emotional support really looks like for caregivers, the unmet needs that exist today, and why so many caregivers find it difficult to reach out for help, even when they need it most. At CanCare, we've spent 35 years learning that cancer doesn't just impact the person diagnosed, it impacts the whole family. Caregivers deserve the same compassion, understanding, and hope that we offer to patients. Whether you're currently a cancer caregiver, you've been one in the past, or you simply want to understand how to show up for someone navigating this journey, I invite you to tune into this conversation as we honor and uplift caregivers everywhere, because no one should face cancer alone.
Hello, everyone. My sincerest apologies for that. I'm Rose Gerber, the Director of Patient Advocacy and Education for COA. Thank you for waiting for me on this. There's little technical issues. And thank you to our wonderful guest, Darcie Wells. She is the CEO and President of CanCare, an incredible organization in Texas. And I have asked her to join us today because it's National Caregivers Month. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Darcie, can you start by giving us an overview of CanCare and what you do that is very different in supporting cancer caregivers as well as the patients?
Absolutely, and thanks so much for having me. So CanCare has been providing peer-to-peer cancer support for 35 years now, so we are experts in this area. And what makes us really unique is that we recognize that cancer doesn't just impact the person diagnosed, it impacts everyone who cares about the person living with a cancer diagnosis. So when someone's diagnosed with cancer, their entire support system is impacted. There could be their spouse or their partner, children, parents, close friends. Anyone stepping into a caregiving role is really facing a time of uncharted territory and a diagnosis. So that's why we don't just match cancer patients with trained volunteers who've been through a similar experience. We match anyone affected by the diagnosis. So our volunteers are people who have walked this path themselves, whether they're patients or caregivers, and they really understand. They've sat in the same waiting rooms and had those same 3 a.m. worries and navigated the same overwhelming decisions. So it's really a critical service, not just for our survivors, but for our caregivers as well.
Thank you. And I appreciate how you said the 3 a.m. because any cancer patient knows, and I guess maybe you'll be able to tell us if it affects the caregiver as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times you feel like you're doing great throughout the day, and then at nighttime, that's when all the thoughts come into your head. And by the way, I think that something really wonderful about your organization is you're really crystal clear on what your mission is, right? Which is emotional support. And I think that is so important. Now, give us further insight into why the caregivers need that support the same way, because there might be people who think, well, I really appreciate my friend, my husband, my coworker who's supporting me, but I'm the one going through cancer. What could they possibly be dealing with? Is it on the same level? Help us understand that, Darcie, please.
Absolutely. So, when the caregiver breaks down, the entire support system breaks down. So if you think about it, the person maybe who's managing the medications or coordinating appointments, providing the emotional support, and just keeping that daily life running. If they become overwhelmed or ill themselves, who steps in? So, cancer treatment can last months or years, and caregivers can be running on empty. They can be physically and emotionally exhausted. So we also see that caregivers tend to put themselves last. They're so focused on getting their loved one through treatment that they may skip their own appointments or stop exercising or not be sleeping well. So supporting the caregiver is critically important. And when the caregiver feels supported and who has someone to talk to, they're better equipped to support the loved one facing treatment. So we're really impacting the person facing treatment when we're supporting the caregiver.
That's really good because, it's not taking away from the patient's needs, right? But it's, making sure that they're okay as well. So I know that your organization does peer-to-peer. However, what you and I talked about in our planning calls before this is that sometimes there's a lot of information out there and it might not be accurate information. And hopefully the person you pair them with is going to be a source of good information, inspiration. So what is your process through your organization and making sure that the person who's supporting either the patient or in this case, the caregiver, what does that process look like? How do you prepare that caregiver to actually be a positive source of information instead of maybe possibly bringing them down or making it about themselves?
Absolutely. So, we don't just have someone raise their hand and throw them, right into supporting someone who's on that caregiver journey. So, we have a very methodical process. First we like to ascertain, is the person ready for volunteering, whether that's the person who's facing treatment themselves or the caregiver. Are they emotionally ready for the experience? So, we tend to ask that that person be about 6 months out of their immediate caregiving experience before they raise their hand to volunteer. And so we carefully vet our volunteers, and then we put them through training. And so that's one of the things that makes our program really unique, is that we do have a comprehensive training program. It's led and designed by mental health professionals. And it first walks you through really processing your own emotional journey from your own cancer experience, and then providing you the tools and equipment to support others. And then we're there along the way to provide support and coaching along the way as well. So anyone who volunteers with us is well equipped to provide support.
I think that's so important because oftentimes we have our own blind spots, whether you're a cancer survivor or you're a caregiver. And for not every advocate or survivor caregiver wants to become an advocate, but most that do think they're ready until they actually get in a real life scenario. So I also, in working and developing advocates, I always want to make sure that they're ready because again, it's very easy to like break down, and those are real, but you're trying to be a source of inspiration. So you mentioned that the training is led by the mental health professionals, and is this something? Do they touch base with them throughout the year? Like once you have paired someone and you feel that they're ready now to be matched up with another caregiver, how do you ensure that professionalism continues? Is it like
Yes.
spot checks? How do you manage that process?
Absolutely. So we're checking in with the person they're supporting, what we call our client, on a regular basis. How's it going? Are you having any difficulties, with your volunteer match? So we know if the client has any issues, we can intervene there as well. Our volunteers also have a mentor that really stays with them for the first 6 months as they're kind of getting their feet wet and supporting people who are going through this cancer journey. So they're checking in, they're kind of on call, for any questions that they might have. So they have a hand to hold through that process.
That is comforting. What is the process in terms of parameters, right? So some of these caregivers, you mentioned, might only be 6 months out of their own role. So when a cancer caregiver or survivor needs someone, sometimes they want to call at any time of the day or night. So also protect your caregivers in that way. What kind of protocols do you have in place for that?
Absolutely. So, a number of our volunteers could be still full-time employed. Sometimes they're retired or have more time on their hands, but they have a schedule. And so we want to make sure to match them with folks that can, work within the parameters of that schedule. And if at any point in time the client needs something outside of that volunteer's capabilities, whether it's a frequency of connection or a certain time of day, we can always rematch them with the volunteer that best matches their schedule.
So you mentioned a very important word, match. How do you match them, Darcie?
Yes.
Do they fill out a bunch of questions, or what is their experience with the same type of cancer, gender? What is that process like as
Yeah,
well?
so there's two ways. People can match themselves in our system. It's kind of like the Match.com of cancer
Oh,
support. So
okay.
if you log in and you want to be matched with a volunteer, you can actually see the volunteer options available to you.
Oh,
You can read their stories. You can say, oh, that really resonated with me because that's what I went through. And so you can do that self-matching if you'd like.
okay.
Or you can have CanCare match for you. And when CanCare matches for you, if it's a caregiver, we're going to match based on the relationship to the person that you're supporting facing cancer. So if you are currently supporting a parent facing cancer, we'll match you with someone who supported a parent. It's different than how we match someone who is diagnosed. We'll match them based on the cancer type, cancer stage, their treatment type, so that those parameters are a match. But for caregivers, we find that it's the relationship that matters most. It's different caring for a
Yes.
parent, caring for a child, caring for a spouse. And so there we really match based upon the relationship.
Oh, that's really fascinating, and that That is very interesting too, because you're right. As for someone supporting a parent, I would imagine there's all kinds of dynamics, right?
Yeah.
There could be family tension, or my mom or my dad, or so that's really good to know. Now, what are the characteristics in terms of the demographics with the volunteers? Are they mainly men, women? I know in the cancer survivorship world with volunteers, it's primarily women. So how does that look when it's the caregiver role?
Yeah, it's very similar, to what you're seeing, kind of the general demographics. We do have more women than men volunteers. So if you're a man out there listening and you've been a caregiver, we need you.
Right.
But the age ranges vary, from 18 to 98, literally in our volunteer
Okay.
population. So we generally can find someone who has had a similar situation, is in a similar stage of life that you were in during your cancer journey, in similar circumstances that will match best with you.
So you mentioned something. She just very subtly recruited all of you in case you wanted, which is what you should do. Now, I mentioned, before my computer gave me issues, is that they're a Texas-based organization, but can you also talk about your national reach and really how that changed post-COVID, when you
Absolutely.
really started doing a lot of virtual and what that meant for you as an organization and for the patients and caregivers that you serve?
Yes, absolutely. So we were born in Houston in 1990. And really, it was through COVID that we really expanded our reach very quickly to all 50 states. We had a model that was highly in person, for many, many years. And when COVID hit and we couldn't be in person, we really had to rethink our model and rethink the way that we're supporting people. And it really gave us an opportunity to say, well, we're forced to do this differently, so let's get
Yeah.
out of our comfort zone. And so we were able to start recruiting volunteers from all 50 states. We now have volunteers in 28 states across the country because we've launched a really virtual training model, and they
Mhm.
go through the training process virtually. And so we support clients in all 50 states as well. So someone facing cancer in California might be matched with someone in New York if that is the best match for the experience. But they can also tell us, you know what, I really want someone in my hometown, and we can
Mhm.
accommodate that as well.
And I know when we first spoke, I had mentioned to you that that's something that, when I work with other national advocacy directors, that exactly what you said is what we've all been saying, is that the model changes because of the need. But then what ends up happening is you have greater reach,
Yeah.
more impact. And it's almost as if you're an employer in a sense where your talent pool, just
Yeah.
expanded. So now that you have this, national footprint, and you're talking to so many caregivers from your home state of Texas, that big state of Texas,
Yeah.
what are you hearing in terms of the unmet needs that the caregivers have when someone is reaching out to your organization? What are their needs, and also how do they find you?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest unmet needs is recognition. And when I
Mm,
say that, many cancer caregivers don't even identify themselves as caregivers,
right.
especially if you're a close friend or if you're a family member who's helping, they, just see themselves as doing something that they do in relationship. So I think, caregivers really need the recognition that they're playing a critical role in the cancer journey. And of course, that requires support as well. Second, I'd say what we're seeing is isolation among
Oh, okay.
caregivers. Caregivers often don't feel like they can really share the full weight of what it's like to be the caregiver. They often don't want to burden the patient with their own fears, or they don't want to worry their family and friends. So they carry a lot alone. And so CanCare provides that safe place with someone who has been in that situation, that they can be completely honest. They can talk about their fears. They can talk about their frustrations without burdening their loved one. And the third thing that I see is, this real long-term nature of cancer caregiving. So,
Mm,
AARP released a study earlier this year that said that 30% of all caregivers have been in that role for more than 5 years. And if
wow.
we're talking about a metastatic cancer or something that you're going to be living with, that caregiving role could go on for a really long time. So cancer isn't always a short-term crisis. So caregivers need different things at different times along the journey. And so we can meet them wherever they are on that journey. So those are some of the biggest trends that we're seeing.
Darcie, again, I probably already said this 5 times, but you, the these advocacy chats are designed to provide education not only on COA's policies, but on other topics of interest to patients. And you just said something very interesting is even identification with the word caregiver. And I was very private when I went through my own cancer experience, and which is different because I'm very extroverted. But during my own cancer experience, I was very private. And my husband was my support, but I would have never thought of using the word at the time as my
Yes.
caregiver because that just seems awkward and strange.
Yeah. Well,
But
he's my
it
husband.
really, he's
Yeah.
my husband, right? But he played a critical role in, being there for me and still
Yeah.
is to this day, right? And I think that's, I don't know, does the word need to change maybe, or is there just maybe an acceptance of that word? Because it does seem a little awkward sometimes to use that word.
Yeah, I do. I do think it can be awkward, but I think it is important that in that case, your husband recognized that he is a caregiver and that comes with its own set of burdens, and that, you need to be able to fill your own cup before you can, pour from it. So, I don't know that there would be a better word than caregiver, but I think it's really important for us to educate people who are loving someone with cancer. And sometimes we use that definition, just someone who's
Yeah,
loving someone with
that's a good one. I
cancer.
like that.
Yeah, is a caregiver. Hmm.
Right. And like we talked about, it can be your friends, your coworkers. So many people step up in different ways. And that's another thing, Darcie. It's not just one person who's the caregiver, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're open to anyone, right? It doesn't have to be the spouse or it's whoever that
It
person
can be a friend.
identifies.
Yeah, it can. And then you asked a question a minute ago about, there's some reluctance
Mm,
for people to reach out for support. And we absolutely see that. And we've been wrestling with, so how do we support, whether it be the patient or the caregiver who's reluctant to reach out for support, but they need it? And so, in honor of our 35th anniversary this year, we published a book. We said, okay, maybe somebody who doesn't want to pick up the phone or go online and request a match, but maybe they would pick up a book. And so, we published a book called Hope in the Face of Cancer, and it is 50 plus stories of survivors, caregivers, and healthcare professionals walking you through their own journeys, what gave them hope and what was the most helpful things in their journey. And so that alone, provides support. Part of hope in the cancer journey is seeing someone who has been in your shoes and come out on the other side and
right.
having learnings from that. And so if it's the book that does that, if it's a match that does that, we just want people to be able to see, the perspective of someone who's been there and successfully walked through that cancer journey.
Very, very good information. Now, when someone is volunteering, because you did mention if anyone wanted to get involved with the organization, do they have to commit to a certain time frame, like I'm going to be a volunteer for 6 months, or do they have the option of opting out if they find out that this isn't really what I thought it was going to be, or maybe I'm not ready when I thought it was?
Yeah.
Does that look like for anyone that might be interested in saying, I want to get some formal training? I have been a caregiver, but maybe I want to do some formal training with this organization. What does that look
Absolutely.
like?
So the volunteer is really in control of your own schedule and of your own commitment. As I said, some people are working full time, others may not be. So those that may not be working can take on many, many clients at one time.
Hmm.
Those that are working might say, I can only handle one or two relationships. You can kind of turn on and off your availability at any point in time. There may be seasons of life, and sometimes there's recurrences in the cancer journey. And so there's seasons when you're like, I can't do as much right now. And there's seasons when you really want to give more. And, our program really allows for that and meets you where you are.
I mean, you're definitely, keeping everything current and modern. It sounds almost like the
Yeah.
Uber driver can decide when they want to, when they're
Right.
working and when they're not. How do the patients react when their significant other or caregiver wants to go through this program? Are you finding that they're receptive? Is there any pushback? Do you ever have a conflict where maybe a caregiver wants to get involved? Do they need the sign off of the patient? How does that
Absolutely.
work?
Yeah, absolutely not. It's very two independent
It
relationships.
is. Okay.
So there are times when we're supporting a patient, but their caregiver does not want to be matched, or vice versa. And sometimes they go through it together and each have their own match. But where we do see that those, whether it's the patient or the caregiver, if they're feeling supported, takes less, puts less burden on the person they're caring for, and vice versa. And so it's, really something where you're filling your own cup so that you can, be of support to that other person.
So we've talked a lot now about the process that your organization has in place. And again, I love the fact that it's led by professionals, and I think that's very important. Not that I don't see tremendous value in just in peer-to-peer, but it is really important that you do have someone who does keep it,
Yeah.
where it needs to be. What is required then of the caregiver? Do they have to submit any kind of a report after to you, like an email? This is what we talked about. What are the privacy issues?
Yeah, so we do not ask about what takes place inside of those conversations. They're truly completely confidential and private. We provide our volunteers a private diary and journal. That's part of our system where they can take notes on the
Okay.
person they're supporting so they can keep up with things like, oh, they have this big appointment coming up. Let me check in on them. But that is really a confidential relationship. Where we get involved is by checking in with both the volunteer and the client, saying, "How's it going? Is there
Mm.
anything that you need support with?" Sometimes a client may say, "I've had a great relationship with this volunteer, but I'd love to meet someone who has had X experience." And so we'll rematch them or we'll give them a
Oh, okay.
second volunteer.
That's great.
So we're constantly in touch and monitoring the health of the relationship, but we don't get involved in the substance of the relationship.
Okay. Very good information. So give me, and our viewers and listeners and people who are watching live, people who will watch later, what is the actual practical advice? Like what do caregivers need? What are they telling each other? What are you telling them? Give
Yeah.
us insight into that, because we talked about the unmet need recognition was a big one, the word association, even with the role. Give us more insight on that, Darcie, please.
I think more than anything, it's someone who will truly listen and not try to interject and diminish what you're feeling. Because oftentimes when
Mm,
we pour out our heart to somebody, they say, "Oh, it's all going to be okay," or "You're going to get through this." But to have someone who really is listening and allowing you to just be, to pour out and to be honest and open without judgment, and who can really relate to that experience, that's the beauty of this relationship. That's the secret sauce, if you will.
yeah.
And in terms of what message I would give to someone, we're celebrating National Caregivers Month, and if you are listening to this and loving someone with cancer, I mean, I would say first and foremost, you're not alone. And you don't
Mm,
have to figure this out by yourself. What you're doing is incredibly hard.
it is.
Oftentimes caregivers, and I'm one myself, think, well, I'm not going through what they're going through. But the caregiver role is tremendously difficult. You almost have to push your emotions down sometimes because you want to put on that brave face for the person you're supporting. So you need to care for yourself, and taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is
Mhm.
essential. Okay, so I would say that as well. And then lastly, I would just say that there are people out there who have walked this path. There are people out there who, have gone through exact same things that you have gone through, and many people don't realize that hey, in this day and age, I can connect with someone like that. In a matter of days, I can have someone who's experienced the same journey that I've had, to share my fears and to share my exhaustion, to share my grief, and to be heard and to be supported in that. So, if you are in that place, we are here. If you've been in that place, we would love for you to join our family.
To our listeners, I also want to say, our participants, that when I introduced you, uh, which of course is still is correct. You are the president and CEO of this incredible organization, but we just heard also that you're a caregiver. Can you talk, because you and I talked about it, about your role from the personal angle and also the out of state element? Because I think we're going to have people that can identify with that. If you can share a little bit about that. And I know I'm going to say run over a little bit. I hope people can stay with us because we had a little technical issues, because Darcie does have some very valuable information to share, as we've all heard. So we'd love to hear that part, Darcie.
Yeah, so over an 8-year period, I was a long distance caregiver to my mother and my stepfather and my grandmother, who all faced cancer in that period of time. And this was before I knew about CanCare. And this was before I joined the organization as CEO. And it was so difficult to understand, how can I help? How can I really, support my loved ones when I'm, hundreds of miles away raising, young children? What does that look like? And I didn't know that such an organization existed. I didn't know I could have support in someone who has been there and done that. by my side, and I certainly wish I could have done that. Could have had that. I have a special, place in my heart for long distance caregivers because there's a certain helplessness there that you're not able to hands-on, you're not able to cook that meal or drive
Right.
to an appointment. So how can you best support them? And of course, I've learned now that listening, I mean, truly, truly just listening and holding space for them to share, their feelings and emotion. I also have learned not only through my journey, but through, listening to our caregivers, some very practical tips if you are caring for someone with cancer. So I'd love to share a couple of
Yeah.
those with you guys. First is be very specific in the help that you can offer. So we might, default to saying, well, call me if you need anything, I'm here. And that can be very well intentioned, but it's putting a burden back on the person who's
Yes.
dealing, with cancer to figure out how you can help them. So be specific, like, I can drive you to an appointment on Tuesday, or I can bring dinner on Monday of next week. So be very specific. I'd also say your role as a caregiver and someone loving someone with cancer isn't to fix anything. People facing cancer need to talk about what's happening. They need to express their feelings, but they don't need you to try to fix it. Your job isn't to make it better. It's not to find solutions. Your job is to be present and to listen and just to say, I'm here and I'm listening. And third, I would say, use the word cancer. I see a lot of people say, well, in your situation or with what you're going through, trying to maybe dance around that feeling like that would be helpful to someone, but it can actually minimize what the person facing cancer is experiencing. So using that actual word really acknowledges and validates the reality that they're in. So those would be just a
Yeah.
few tips I would give.
Yeah, that's so important, and it's something you've said a couple of times, and it's so I'm so glad you've said it, Darcie. It's a subject that I'm very focused on as well. And people don't necessarily, they're not trying to be hurtful. They don't mean
Yeah.
it, and this is why we provide education. But the minimization when someone does speak up, I've just like you, Darcie, I've done a lot of public speaking, and I've talked a lot about how excited I am about all the progress that has been made in cancer survivorship. And every June is National Cancer Survivorship Month, and it's so important. I mean, literally, there's millions of survivors around the world. That's wonderful. But something that I always talk about is that's great, but for the person who's newly diagnosed, it is absolutely devastating. And
Yeah.
I've worked with cancer patients for over 15 years now, professionally, and then in my personal role as well. And that is something that has never changed. The devastation is there. So, but I also hear back from people that, oh, I told someone that I have breast cancer, triple negative, or, HER2, whatever it is. And these are, very, all cancer is serious, but it's often minimized. Oh, you're going to be fine. And it's very upsetting to the patient
Yes.
because their world right there is only them. And
Yes.
so I love that you said that they want to be validated and listened to. And it's not, again, I don't, people that are trying to help us, they're just trying to help us. We're all human. We make mistakes. But when we hear it from someone like you who's running a national organization, or someone like me who's had the experience as well
Yeah.
and working with people, it's an important reminder. So this has been really great information. Darcie, do you want to share some information on your website and again, how people can get involved? Do you want to repeat that one more time? That'd be great.
Absolutely. So we'd love for you to visit cancare.org. So if you're currently facing cancer or loving someone with cancer, we can support you. So cancare.org to get support. Or if you have been a cancer, or if you're a cancer survivor or have been a cancer caregiver, we need you as part of our family. So go to cancare.org and learn more about volunteering and joining our volunteer community.
Thank you, Darcie. And I like so much about this, but I love loving someone with cancer. That's really, really good. And stay with us. We have just two more quick slides for reminders for everyone. And thank you, Darcie. It's been very valuable information. And thank you for being our guest for National Caregivers Month. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you,
Next
Rose.
slide, if we can, we have a slide coming up. Drew, can you go to the next slide, or to the slide, I should say. It looks like we're having a little technical challenges today, so great. This is just a reminder for the ways that you can stay engaged with CPAN throughout the year. Join our monthly advocacy chats. We talk about many different subjects, whether it's COA policies, PBMs, prior authorization, what's going on in Capitol Hill, what's happening at the state level, survivorship. We cover it all. And we have great speakers like Darcie. Sign up for our CPAN newsletter, visit our website to learn more, share your story. Darcie even mentioned that today when we talk and share each other's stories, whether it's being matched with someone through an organization like CanCare, or sharing, connecting online. It's very, very helpful when someone else gets inspired by your story. Follow us on social media. And then we have one last slide. And this is where I can thank Darcie again for being such a fabulous speaker, leading a fantastic organization. Thank you all for joining us, participating, and please look forward to seeing this chat online in just a few days. Thank you, Darcie, and I will see you all next month, where we'll share some great highlights of all the different work that we've done this past year, including our most recent chapter launch at Clearview Cancer Institute in Huntsville, Alabama. So that was really incredible to be around those amazing patient survivors, and there was a lot of caregivers there that evening as well. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, Darcie.
Thank you.
You're fabulous. Thank you, Darcie.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hope in the Face of Cancer, a survivor by your side. If you or someone you know is facing cancer or is supporting a loved one through their journey, we invite you to share this podcast. Thank you for your support in our efforts in the cancer community. No one should face cancer alone.